Okay, so we're honored to have here John Malpede and Henriette Brouwers. So if you have questions, you can aim them either at me or at them.
Can you give an example of how your work has been tied to policy change or to efforts to change policy?
Kevin, why don't you do it? Did you hear the question?
No, I didn't.
Example of how your work has been tied to policy change or efforts to change policy?
Well, we've got something going on right now that's a pretty big fight, and it has to do with the revitalization of downtown as a whole, and whether we're going to capitalize on our human resources or is all going to be focused on financial revitalization. And we're not against there being a financial revitalization, but not at the expense of our human assets. So there's a big housing provider, a nonprofit housing provider, and they built this beautiful building because they're very much into architectural and fitting in on Main Street, which is sort of like the line of demarcation. And at the bottom of it, they want to, and their clientele, the people that they're supposed to be serving are the chronically homeless, the mentally ill, and people new to recovery. And on the ground floor of this restaurant that was built with our tax dollars, they want to put another alcohol restaurant, a restaurant that serves booze. And we're not against them being a restaurant there, but we just think that particularly alcohol and psych meds, and alcohol in this particular venue is an explosive and fatal mix. Me and another member of the LAPD, we appealed it, we won the appeal, they turned back around and did it for us. So first it was for a full line of alcohol, including hard liquor. Now it's beer and wine only. So that's an ongoing fight that we're doing. And irony of ironies, that two of their biggest arguments are, number one, well, they can get alcohol anyplace else in the community, number one. So number two, because ours is going to be a high-end venue, we're not targeting the people who live in the building anyway. So what kind of apartheid mess is that? You know what I mean? We're going to put it in your building, but you're not supposed to use it. And I don't know about you guys, but every bottle of psych meds I've ever seen is a big, skull and crossbound says, please do not mix with alcohol. So that's something that the community has organized around, and invariably most of the people who populate that building and populate the community think it's simply a bad idea. We're against some very high-powered, well-connected, well-resourced financially people, but so far we've actually been able to have the city hear our concerns and take them to be credible issues that need to be dealt with.
I think earlier you were asking Larissa, like, what's the difference between Skid Row and the Bowery? And the big important difference, and what a lot of this work is about, is that in the 70s, when they started doing urban renewal in LA, they did Bunker Hill, which is, if you watch soap operas or car commercials, you'll see the skyline of the downtown of LA. So they clear-cut a neighborhood there, a boarding house neighborhood, and they built the big towers. They wanted to do that down below, which is where Skid Row is, and some activists, including the guys from the Catholic Worker, Jeff Dietrich and Catherine Morris, and some people from Legal Aid, who I used to work for, and something called the Urban Design Center. They put through an alternative plan, and it preserved 50 square blocks in the center of LA with the most SRO housing that hadn't already been knocked down, and it preserved that neighborhood. So that is Skid Row. That's still the zoning policy of Los Angeles. So what's happened is that it's become a permanent neighborhood. Not only is it a place for people, living on the streets, people getting off the streets and transitioning, but it's for people who most of the population is a permanent population, and most of the hotels are now permanent for permanent residents, and they've built new hotels, including the one that Kevin was talking about earlier. So because that population is permanent, they've been able to organize in various ways, including LAPD, including other organizations, and they've been able to advocate for the neighborhood, on behalf of the neighborhood, And so, but I always say we're the second most well-known, activist theater in Skid Row with the call letters LAPD, because the police, and of course now everything is migrating back to Broadway with Chief Bratton coming back here, but his whole broken windows thing, which has been used to criminalize the neighborhood. 65% of all the jaywalking tickets in Los Angeles, which is like about as big as Belgium, are given in the 50 square blocks of Skid Row. People are arrested for stolen shopping carts, stolen milk crate. People are just thrown up against the wall and asked if they're on probation. So the city has lost a number of lawsuits because of its aggressive policing. I just read in the paper yesterday here in New York that they're not going to send rookie cops into the most dangerous neighborhoods. That is exactly what they did in LA. They sent 50 rookie cops into Skid Row, to train them and to criminalize the population. So unlike the Bowery, there is no Whole Foods, unfortunately, in Skid Row. There is no multiplex. There is no high-end hotel. There is no tapas bar called SRO. It's a neighborhood that is functioning and is responsive to the people that live there.
And one of the things that has sprung up, and this gentleman is but I see a number of people who are 12-step advocates and people in long-term recovery. I'll point out this one gentleman, Red, who was very important to me. He was my treatment specialist when I went into a program in Skid Row. Because I had a profession, I had insurance, I had been all over the country, paying to try and get recovery, right? And then I ended up down on my luck. I ended up in Skid Row and I met Red. And there are at least 5 to 7 people amongst this group of people at 12 step. But what has since morphed, Red slept on the street for decades. And then ultimately he got clean and sober. Instead of getting clean and sober, splitting, he stayed in the community. He started giving back. And he died a clean and sober member of what we now like to call the world's largest recovery community. World's biggest recovery community is the performance piece that stemmed out of looking at. And anybody familiar with 12-step knows that it's a free program. You know what I mean? One addict, one alcoholic, helping another people. And as we began looking at it, we began seeing the various types. Molly Lowry opened the LAMP community, which has helped mentally ill people with their recovery. The woman that did the Women's Center helped people with mental illness and victims of domestic violence. Red was a vet. There's a large recovery community of disabled veterans. So every place you look, you see the various types of recoveries that's going on. And it's very open, it's very honest, and like we talk in LAPD about being the real deal. And so a real community to counter that mass media narrative, right? That is hit and run type of community, a community of transients, right? So when they walk down the street and they do their drive-by, they see me 11 and some change years ago. They see Red 20 plus years ago. They see the other people up here who I won't name, but are in long-term recovery, and all of these people have made significant contributions to the stability and to the growth of what's a really very sophisticated and well-entrenched recovery community in Skid Row.
I had a quick question for this gentleman. What is the name of the revitalization program? Is there an official title that the city or the developers has given it, or no?
No, they like to self-title, call themselves urban pioneers, but the local neighborhood council is spearheading it.
You're on that council.
Yeah.
You're a member of the town council.
Yeah, I'm the one that does the minority reports.
And which nonprofit is there a name?
Skid Row Housing Trust.
Skid Row Housing Trust.
Yeah, and if you look on their website, what you'll see is when they do their quarterly report, there's always a picture of somebody in recovery, right? And they promote it and talk about it. Now they are a harm reduction housing first model, but they'll always put up someone who's been able to stay stopped, as we say, for a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? But unfortunately, that's the exception rather than the rule. And I support housing for everybody. All we're really saying is how can you go against the principles upon which this entire organization were built upon.
Maybe give an example of how you're using some of in this current struggle. Are there LAPD works that you're working on as well, using some of that text, or are you using it in the committee right now? Or
well, we did mention and utilize. Remember, we did the map of the various programs. So
areas of gentrification.
No,
we did a show called, because I read in the New York Times when we were working on the show Utopia Dystopia about the gentrification a few years ago. I read an article in the New York Times about how Delray Beach, Florida was the biggest recovery community anywhere because there were a lot of private programs located there. People pay a lot of money and they get out of the programs and they stay in the community, and so it becomes a place that has a really sophisticated recovery vibe and is very supportive, But then we said, well, probably it's not as big as, Skid Row, as a recovery community. So we decided to make another show called Biggest Recovery Community Anywhere, which documented the growth of the recovery community in Skid Row and countered, the sort of, as Kevin called, the drive-by, because the truth is on Skid Row, you can drive down the street and see a whole, block after block of people living in tents right on the street. And a lot of those people are in their addiction. But you can't see the people, the 20 other people that used to live in that box who are now, clean and sober, living in the hotels or living in Orange County or somewhere else and doing something else. So it's very convenient. That picture of someone in the tent with a crack pipe is very convenient if you're trying to clear out the area so you can make $1 gazillion.
And the irony is, first of all, that as part of that, we figured out that the first open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous took place
On the West Coast.
on the West Coast, west of the Mississippi, I believe, took place in a hotel right on that cusp of Skid Row, on the Main Street portion of Skid Row, right? And so that was, and when I say open meeting, meaning that it wasn't a private meeting with a couple of friends who were all drinkers and they were helping themselves, but it was open to the public. That happened in Skid Row. Another irony is that there is a meeting called the Skid Row Drifters. It meets 7 days a week and twice on Sunday in one of the Skid Row parks, Gladys Park. And this park, as a result of some shenanigans by the governor, has nobody patrolling it or taking care of it. It's a human resource. But they won't fund the cleanup. So the community people are actually cleaning up that park during the day so that by night, this meeting that's been going on 25, 30 years is still going on. So the policy is hands off, but the people are stepping into the breach and doing what they do to make sure that people can get help if they're seeking it.
Other works as well have been focused on policy change. For example, Agents and Assets, which you were also a part of. The first touring version of Agents and Assets, which I believe was Detroit.
I think
Is that
so.
true?
But wherever they were putting forth ballot initiatives, propositions, or legislation that increased treatment services and decrease incarceration, John and the group, I've made some of the trips, but so to help create a buzz and have a conversation about, where government should be focusing its resources. Should it be trying to help treatment and expand treatment, or should we expand the penal facilities?
I think we better plug the book.
Yeah, plug the book. Agents and Assets.
Because Agents and Assets, which is in this back here, and we're going to do it. Agentes Activos later in the month, which is the Spanish version of that. It's about the text is a hearing from maybe this was said when I was around somewhere else. The text is a hearing from the U.S. Congress on whether the CIA let contra operatives bring crack into California, or bring cocaine into California at the beginning of the crack epidemic. So it's this crazy thing that's international, and it also has to do with the inner city Los Angeles. And it created a huge furor in inner city Los Angeles, and as a result there was a hearing that happened in the 90s, and we dramatized that hearing. So it's sort of like, and we've always done it in conjunction with recovery programs, and also in the cast, and also with panels that happen after it and then turn into a community conversation. So we've had a lot of people who have done, like Robert Perry, the journalist who broke the Iran-Contra story, and Al McCoy, a historian of the drug war, a major historian of the drug war, in conversation with whatever community we're in. And so I took a bunch of those conversations in places like LA, Cleveland, Detroit, and the Netherlands, I think, and edited them down to create this sort of narrative that includes this, all these different levels of expertise and conversation with one another. So it's a pretty interesting read, and the Queens Museum has published it, and it's available in the bookstore for $12.95.
For only how much?
$12.95. And it's over 400 pages, so that's really like pennies a page. But it's a really, I'm very happy they did it, and it's a really interesting read because it has so many different voices and so much wisdom from so many places on the globe and in the city.